Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our online information session today. We are talking about building brain healthy habits, and we're lucky enough to have with us Melissa Grenier, who is the regional manager for the Alzheimer's Association of Massachusetts and New Hampshire chapter. And I'll talk a little bit about Melissa in a moment. I'm going to keep going through our introductions today. I am Jennifer Coles, Community Sales Advisor, and with me today is Ava Pittman, our Marketing Coordinator, and Kimberly Murphy, our Director of Marketing. And we are the RiverMead Marketing Team. So thank you for joining us. What we'd like to do today is a quick overview of RiverMead and talk about our life care community and talk a little bit about our specialized memory care neighborhood. And then I'm going to pass it over to Melissa, who has a presentation about healthy brain habits. And this is all great information. I know all of you are interested in learning more about this. And of course, if there's any additional information, you can go to the Alzheimer's Association website, and they've got great resources and information for you. So just a little housekeeping today. We are in a webinar format, which means your microphones are on mute, but we are taking questions. So please submit your questions through the Q&A feature on the Zoom call, and we will hold questions to the end, but really we want to answer your questions. I'm happy to answer your questions about RiverMead, and Melissa's happy to answer any other questions you may have. We're going to record this presentation so that we can share this with others in the future. And we also welcome your suggestions on other topics you'd like us to cover, whether it has to do with healthy aging, RiverMead. Please share your suggestions with us. And we like hearing your feedback if you found this useful, interesting, and what we can do more of for you. So a little bit about RiverMead, just a brief overview. We've been here operating for 30 years. So our life plan community is 30 years old, and we are a type A life care contract. There's several different contract styles. And if you'd like to learn more about how CCRCs and contracts work, we have other programs recorded and they're on our website, but we're just going to sort of go through the brief overview. We are not-for-profit, so we have a not-for-profit mission. We are governed by a volunteer board, and those people are local stakeholders. Our residents are on our board. The family members are on our board, and they really look to keep RiverMead financially strong and stable and operating into the future. We are a single site community, so we're one RiverMead, but we have two campuses, our Mead campus and our Village campus. We have 179 independent living apartments, cottages, and villas. And that's between our two campuses, the Mead and the Village. We have in our health center, we have 102 total assisted living and memory support apartments and studios. So that's a combination of memory care and assisted living. Our memory care is on an assisted living level. We also have nursing respite care here for our residents. We are fully staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and our residents have access to the health center for higher level of care for a nominal fee. So our residents come to live in independent living, and as time goes on, if they need a higher level of care, they access that through our continuum for just a small additional charge. So a CCRC is really a concept about living a different lifestyle where you're not maintaining a home. You've given up home ownership and you're living this freedom of a home maintenance lifestyle. So we cover housekeeping, maintenance, local transportation, landscaping, snow removal, and security. Excuse me. And that gives you time to focus on the things that you're interested in doing. So RiverMead is an insurance product. We are overseen by the Department of Insurance, the New Hampshire State Department of Insurance. They regulate us. And so what you're paying for is future care. You have an upfront entrance fee and monthly service fees that will help you know exactly how much your care is going to cost. Excuse me, I need to take one more sip of water here. And so this is a promise that you know you can always access assisted living and memory care here on our campus. We also do what we call a direct admit. So when we have availability on our assisted living and memory care neighborhoods, we can offer out to the public. So those are for people who wouldn't come through the contract, the regular contract, and through the continuum of care. So they could move directly into our assisted living and memory care neighborhoods. So we currently do have openings in our memory care neighborhoods. It's important to know that a portion of your entrance fee and your monthly fees are tax deductible. So you're prepaying for future care through your entrance fee and monthly fee. Our memory care neighborhood is a special neighborhood that we have here. We offer a person-centered care where it's really resident-driven. The programming, the care model is all about caring for residents who have memory loss. And residents who live in our memory care neighborhood have access to our whole community. That neighborhood is a secure neighborhood with a key fob to come and go. But our residents enjoy a wide variety of programming, socializing, and connection with our whole community. So it's not just our residents who are going through the continuum for moving to memory care, but also for their families and their spouses. It's a great option to alleviate caregiver burnout and have an opportunity for residents to live a great lifestyle here at RiverMead and know that their loved one is cared for. Included in the memory support neighborhood are 3 meals a day and studio style apartments, all with private bathrooms. We have lots of great outdoor spaces. There's some patios, an outdoor garden. There are common spaces for activities. There's a living room area that feels very home-like. And there's just a sense of community. I gave a tour of memory care this morning, and what the folks were saying to me is, wow, this really feels like there's a lot going on, and it feels warm. And it does. It feels warm and friendly. And we know that moving to a higher level of care can be scary, and it can be a challenge for families. And so we have an assisted living transition counselor who works with families to help them make those transitions and to have those tough conversations and really to sort of wrap arms around people as they're making that transition. And we know that people, once they get adjusted to their new home environment, they have a lot of great success. And we know too how to sort of keep people busy and happy and doing things they like to do and keep them, meet them where they're at. So we know that some people are very active and like to get outside and still swim in the pool and take part in all the things that they've done through their whole life. So we've got a great memory care neighborhood. If you'd like to come and take a look, please give me a call. We're happy to give you a tour. Or if you'd like more information about memory care, please reach out to us. We also have some pricing on our website if you'd like to see what that looks like. Our pricing for memory care is it's one level. We don't offer different levels of pricing. We have a one level pricing. So it's all inclusive. So it's easy for families to plan ahead for their loved one.
Thank you, Jennifer. Just want to give a shout out to RiverMead for supporting the Alzheimer's Association and sponsoring our Western New Hampshire walk that will take place at the end of October at Keene State College. So if you're local in the Monadnock region, please feel free to come out and join us. I believe our website is at the end of the presentation on my final slide, so you can get more information about that. At the end of the presentation. So we're going to be going over a program called Building Brain Healthy Habits. And this will talk about ways that we can reduce our risk of developing dementia, and who doesn't want that? So let's move on and get started. So these are the 10 healthy habits for your brain that research has shown are going to be most effective and important for you in reducing your risk of dementia. And I'll tell you a couple when I get to them, a couple of the most important ones and the ones that have the most research backing up that information about them. So I'm not going to go through each one of these now. You can kind of get a peek at what they are, but we're going to go through each one on its own slide. So I don't want to take time to go through those exactly right this minute. What we want to do is just start off with, what is brain health? Brain health is much more than just our memory and our thinking. It includes our social and emotional health. It includes our behavioral and mental health as well. And obviously, it controls our sensory perception, our movement. I mean, our brain really, to be honest with you, controls every single thing that we do, whether it's thinking, whether it's memory, behavior, swallowing, digesting our food, moving, all of those things. So we want to protect our brain as much as possible. Of course, we all want to do that. That's going to help us maintain as much functioning and independence as possible for as long as possible. So how does the brain work? So if we were to look at, get really deep inside the brain and take one neuron, also called a nerve cell, if we were to look at that really closely, we would see that the cell has these branches. I call these branches kind of a communication superhighway. So these neurons or nerve cells communicate with each other through signals, through these branching networks, through these branches. And so what happens is when brain cells are damaged by either Alzheimer's disease or another type of dementia, neurons or nerve cells will not be able to function properly, and they atrophy and they die. So we're not worried about someone losing 10 brain cells. We're worried about someone who's losing millions of brain cells. And that could be from a lot of different conditions. It could be, of course, like I said, from Alzheimer's disease, could be caused from a number of other types of dementia, could be something that's not a dementia at all. It could be a stroke, could be, another chronic illness or an acute illness. So what we want to do is we want to try to maintain, of course, these brain cells for as long as possible. And by making some, shifts in our lifestyle, we can help to do that, help to maintain our brain as long as possible. And we have over 100 billion neurons, again, that connect with each other. At more than 100 trillion points to create this kind of neuron forest or this communication superhighway. So there's a lot going on in our brain that controls everything that we do, and we want to make sure that we maintain that as much as possible. So I like this slide. I'm a very visual person. And so I think this slide really highlights the fact that there's a huge difference in a healthy person's brain and someone who's much later on in the disease process and has had Alzheimer's disease for probably quite a number of years at the end of the disease process. So on the left-hand side, we see a healthy brain. It's full, and a healthy brain weighs about 3 pounds, just as a side note. Um, and then someone in the advanced stage of Alzheimer's disease, their brain can weigh as little as 1.5 to 2 pounds. So as you can see on the right-hand side of this slide, we see that there's atrophy, there's shrinkage in the brain, there's essentially holes where there shouldn't be. And where you see that damage, that shrinkage in the brain, and where you see those gaps in brain matter, that's where pieces of a person's functioning were. So right in the middle, you see some, pretty significant damage happening in the brain, some holes and, where there shouldn't be. And that's the part of the brain deep inside the brain called the hippocampus. That's where the hippocampus is. And so the hippocampus is where we store memories and learn new things. So if that's where not all the damage, but if that's a significant place where damage is happening, then that's where we're going to see symptoms, significant problems in those areas of functioning. So, of course, memory, and learning new things. So when we talk about learning new things, that could be adjusting to a new cell phone, or that could just be new information that someone is trying to share with them that can't be maintained because there's this type of damage happening in the brain. So the brain changes that occur, there's been, let me back up by saying there's been a lot of preventative research studies that are now showing that subtle changes and damage can be happening in the brain 20 years or more before someone starts to experience symptoms, and notice symptoms in their life or in their loved one. So we used to think, probably 2 decades ago, when I started my career, we used to think that damage was starting in the brain maybe 5 years before someone experienced symptoms, 3 to 5 years. But now, again, research has been looking at how far in advance this damage is actually happening. They look at healthy adults that aren't experiencing symptoms of dementia, and they're doing brain scans on them and other testing, and they're finding indications of Alzheimer's disease just barely starting in their brain, which I think is fascinating. I'm really glad that these types of preventative studies are going on, of course, because it helps us understand, you know, where in the future we might be able to intervene in terms of treatments. We don't want to be, we want to get away from treating people once their symptoms have become fairly significant. We want to try to prevent someone from having symptoms that interfere with their daily life. So if we can find, where to intervene in that sort of diagnostic and intervention process, then we can make a much bigger difference and help people live, longer, better quality of their lives. So just really briefly understanding dementia, Alzheimer's is the most common type of dementia. But as I sort of hinted at or mentioned briefly earlier, there are several other types of diseases that can cause dementia. So Alzheimer's doesn't lead to dementia. Dementia doesn't lead to Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is just one, and it's the most common type of dementia. So when you think of the word dementia, all you have to do is think, okay, dementia equals damage happening in the brain. Oops, moved my slides, a little happy there. So dementia equals damage happening in the brain. But what we want to try to tease out is what is the disease process causing those dementia symptoms. So again, Alzheimer's is the most common type of dementia. There's also a vascular type of dementia, which is often caused from a stroke or some little TIAs, or we call those mini strokes. So if someone has had a stroke or or mini strokes, then they're not getting enough oxygen to their brain. And so brain damage, dementia-related symptoms can happen because of that lack of oxygenated blood flow to the brain. So people can, once they, when they're recovering from a stroke, they may be left with a dementia that's related to that lack of oxygen getting to the brain. Now, there's also a different type of dementia called Lewy body dementia. There are some unique features to Lewy body dementia. There can be some vivid delusions and hallucinations. People with Lewy body dementia are incredibly sensitive to medication changes, and they also have trouble with their movement. So starting walking, the actual walking itself, and then stopping their motion. And Lewy body dementia is what Robin Williams, the actor, died of about 8 or 10 years ago. And when we move on and look at frontotemporal degeneration or frontotemporal dementia, we see that there's a lot of damage happening in the front part of the brain and the temporal lobe or the side lobe of the brain. So people with frontotemporal dementia tend to have quite uninhibited behavior, drastic changes in their mood and personality. And they tend to be on the younger side. So people with frontotemporal dementia tend to be, in their 50s, and they tend to be males in their 50s or very early 60s. So frontotemporal dementia is what Bruce Willis, another actor, he has a type of frontotemporal dementia, and he has significant aphasia, which is a condition where someone has trouble with their verbal communication, which he's experiencing a lot of at the moment. And then there's a thing called mixed dementia. And this just means that a person has more than one type of dementia. So if you have Alzheimer's disease, it doesn't guarantee you're not going to have a stroke and be left with a vascular dementia. So anecdotally, over my 20 plus year career, the clients and the people I've worked with, the combination of dementias that I tend to see are Alzheimer's disease and a vascular dementia. Doesn't mean that's the only combination that exists, but I would say that that's the combination that I've seen the most in my career. So this just lends itself to why we need to protect our brain, protect our heart as well, so that our organs and our immune system and our body is functioning as best as possible to fuel our brain so that our brain can do what it needs to do for the rest of our body. So think in your minds, when is the best time to start thinking about brain health? And if you said right now, you would be correct. It's never too early or too late to start taking action to work on your brain health and help lower your risk of developing dementia. Okay, so now we're getting to the crux of what we're here for. So again, there are 10 different healthy habits we're going to briefly go over. These are the first 4. So weight, looking at blood pressure, diabetes, and being smoke-free. So what we say and what we've probably known for a long time, our doctors have been talking to us for a very long time about exercising and doing many other things that protect our heart. And that's because 25% of blood flow from every one of our heartbeats is designated and goes straight to our brain. So if we're having cardiac issues, circulatory issues, vascular issues, we may be putting a lot of strain on our blood vessels that is preventing enough oxygen from getting to the brain. And so again, what's good for the heart is good for the brain and vice versa. So that's one reason why we want to keep our blood pressure within normal limits and keep that monitored and keep that under control. So right now, in the United States, the recommendation is to keep your blood pressure around 130/80. But what I like to tell people is that, that may vary a little bit differently from person to person. So definitely talk to your provider about what is kind of normal for you, what you should be striving for. And obviously, I would hope that your provider would be talking to you about ways to reduce or keep your blood pressure in check, whether it's, again, lifestyle modifications, maybe incorporating some medications and so forth. I would hope that they'd be talking to you about that because, controlling your blood pressure, controlling really a lot of all of these things. Maintaining these and keeping them within normal limits can help reduce one's risk of a heart attack or a stroke, which of course can leave us with a different type of dementia than Alzheimer's disease. So we want to control our blood pressure, and like I was just saying, high blood pressure puts a lot of strain on our blood vessels, not just in our brain but across our body. And we want to make sure that again we're getting enough oxygen and fuel to our brain so it can do what it needs to do. So we also want to encourage people to manage their diabetes and keep their blood sugars, also called your A1C, keep those within normal limits. You can do that by incorporating a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about today anyway. So what's good for the brain is also going to be good for managing chronic illnesses, and diabetes being one of them. So healthy eating, exercise, and even incorporating some medications if your provider feels like that's necessary can be effective in managing diabetes. And the reason why we're talking about diabetes, excuse me, is because there is a direct link between people that have diabetes and developing Alzheimer's disease. So someone with diabetes that is at a much higher risk for developing Alzheimer's than someone without diabetes. So that's a really important reason. All of these are really honestly reasons to, get your annual or your regular checkups so that your doctor can monitor current conditions and identify new ones that might be, starting to pop up. We also want to maintain a healthy weight. Obviously talk to your provider about what's appropriate for you. But what research has shown is that obesity in midlife increases your risk of developing dementia. So obviously we want to be keeping an eye out and maintaining a healthy weight throughout the course of our life. But if there's obesity in the middle of life, then again, that will increase your risk of developing Alzheimer's disease, later on in your life. So again, if we can keep these things within normal limits, it's going to help us maintain our brain health and help us reduce the risk of developing something that we don't want, some type of dementia. Now, I know that, and this might just be my observation, but I think that with the onset of tons of awareness about the impact of smoking on health over the past several decades, I feel like, again, this could just be me. I feel like I see a lot less smoking. I see a lot less, there are fewer opportunities to smoke. And there's stricter legislation and there's just more restrictions on smoking. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist and people don't do it, but if we can, I certainly want to encourage you, if you are a smoker, to cut back and to eventually quit, because people who quit smoking over time, by quitting, they will reduce their risk of developing dementia back to the level of someone who never smoked. So that's pretty amazing. So if you stop smoking, then again, you can reduce your risk of developing dementia back toward, to the level of someone who never smoked. And there are a lot of smoking cessation programs. So talk to your provider, talk to your pharmacist. I used to be a pharmacy technician in college, so I'm always advocating for people to, utilize those pharmacists. They're free and they have a lot of good information, so they can help point you in the direction of maybe something that they have, available to them wherever they're working. But certainly, hospitals and a lot of medical centers, every hospital that I've ever known of has smoking cessation programs. And this is a toll-free 1-800 number if you're interested in getting more information about where to go and how to quit. So we're going to move on to exercise and nutrition are the two most significant lifestyle changes that you can make right now to reduce your risk of developing dementia. There has been so much research about movement and nutrition that not only suggests, but have been, making those changes have been found to reduce your risk of developing dementia and helps to maintain brain health for someone who already has cognitive decline. So let's look a little bit at, a little bit more at these. So So obviously we want to move more. It's good for brain function by increasing blood flow and oxygen to the brain. And it also helps improve connections between brain cells. And then we want to, you know, improve or maintain our healthy eating habits. And I even throw in hydration because a lot of us, including myself probably, are chronically dehydrated. And you can be dehydrated, fall, winter, and spring. It's not just in the summertime when we're hotter and sweating more, maybe, that we can get dehydrated. We can be dehydrated anytime. So, proper nutrition and hydration are going to help you be successful in maintaining brain health. And again, we're going to talk a little bit more about each of these. And sleeping is really important because it helps flush away toxins in our body, and helps us to reduce inflammation and helps us keep things like our blood pressure, our blood sugar, where it needs to be. And I don't know about you, but if you have a poor night's sleep or you chronically have a poor, have poor sleep, then that's really going to affect you, mentally and cognitively as time progresses. I know if I sleep really poorly or I don't get any sleep on a particular night, I am just like the walking dead the next day. It's really hard to focus and concentrate. My memory isn't as good as it usually is. And I just have a harder time kind of multitasking and doing other things. So again, movement, so important. And there's a lot of different ways that you can move. You don't need to run marathons. I know that the aerobic exercise of this talks about moderate to intense aerobic activity, but research has shown that, again, you don't need to do necessarily intense exercising. I'm not a runner. I don't like to run. Plus, I have an old back injury, so running isn't for me. So that would be pretty intense for me, But I can certainly walk. I can kayak. I can do other activities with friends and family that increase, my heart rate to a healthy level, and again helps with my heart health and my brain health. We also want to encourage people, especially women, for bone density purposes, to include a little bit of strength training in their weekly routine. So a couple of times a week, even doing 15 to 20 minutes of strength training can be really helpful for us and for everyone, not just women, of course. And then trying to incorporate some strength and balance exercises can be really helpful. I'm willing to bet that RiverMead has some yoga or chair yoga or some other balance, stretching, exercises or classes or activities that can be done on site. And if you're not at RiverMead, excuse me, necessarily yet, and you're considering it, then there are obviously opportunities outside of RiverMead as well. So you could start doing some of these things: yoga, tai chi. Again, these things can be done seated if you have any mobility or balance issues. So all of these things, especially combined, can really help our bodies move more and maximize that oxygen that's getting to the brain and those connections that we're building in the brain. And then, of course, it's always good to, have someone with you when you're doing these activities. It's great for just having a little more fun while you're doing an activity, but it's also good for accountability. I know that if I coordinate going for a walk after work with my mother, then I'm much more likely to do it because, she'll hold me accountable to agreeing to go for that walk. So again, thinking about something fun, thinking about something new that you might want to try in terms of physical activity, asking your friends or a family member to join you. And tracking your progress. And tracking your progress doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could be wearing a pedometer. It could be wearing, a lot of people have, inexpensive kind of, step trackers that they can wear like a watch. Nowadays, you could do something, they have apps and programs on your computer. So if you want to, go that route, you can certainly do it. But even just keeping an eye on, how many steps you're taking or how many miles you're walking, or other activities that you're doing, you can look back on those things at the end of the week, at the end of the month, and say, wow, okay, I did, 3 days a week, this month. I did, physical activity. And then you can gauge where you want to go from there, whether you want to increase that or maintain that. So keeping track of it can be really helpful. Now, when we're talking about nutrition and hydration, we want to talk to you about the mind diet. So the mind diet. So the mind diet incorporates the Mediterranean diet, which some of you may have heard of. So the mind diet, again, including Mediterranean features of health and nutrition, include things like what you see listed here. So lots of veggies, berries, whole grains, lean protein, beans and legumes, nuts, and healthy oils. And we all know, we know a lot of those things are good for us, and we know that we should limit these other things like red and processed meats, butter and margarine, cheese, which is my downfall. I love cheese. So that's my kryptonite. We want to avoid fried foods, sweets and things with too much salt in them. So, we know from our visiting with our doctors over the years, they've told us a lot of these things as it relates to our heart health and our overall health. But now research has really shown that these things are important for maintaining brain health as well. So these are just a couple of tips. One important thing to remember is to try to incorporate um, new or different items into your nutrition plan. So focus on that rather than focusing on what you can't have. So do you want to start incorporating, protein pasta or high fiber pasta or whole grain pasta into your routine? Do you want to have a yogurt in the afternoon instead of or some mozzarella cheese, instead of having, a candy or a soda or something sweet in the afternoon? So there are ways to incorporate healthier foods into what we're already eating. I'll give an example. Granted, this was many years ago when my daughter was smaller, but I used to puree cooked carrots and put that in pasta sauce so that she was getting an extra serving of vegetables without her knowing it. Again, just focusing on what we can try that's new, maybe some new herbs and spices to flavor our food, maybe incorporating, olive oil if that's not already your oil of choice, or maybe some coconut oil, and incorporating, doing, say, meatless Mondays, which I do at my house. So we don't have any meat on Mondays, and that nowadays can be helpful for our health, but also for our wallet because proteins can be pretty expensive and groceries are pretty expensive nowadays. So again, I also want to just stress hydration as much as possible. So drinking plenty of water, trying to avoid things with a lot of caffeine in it. So tea, jello, soups, but again, really focusing on keeping hydrated. And if you're concerned about that, talk to your doctor about, ways that you can, maximize your hydration, frankly. So sleep, I touched on that, but quality sleep allows you to get through the sleep cycle. We want you to have, deep sleep, which is the most beneficial for your brain. And it can really, again, it can help rejuvenate you, flush things out of your body, and help prepare you mentally and cognitively for the energy and the faculties, that you're going to need for the next day. Adults should aim for 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Uh, I don't quite get that, usually. But, it's not only just the amount of sleep that you have, but it's the type of sleep, the quality of your sleep as well. So these are some tips for sleeping in a more helpful way, in a more healthy way. So avoiding caffeine later in the day. I like to joke around that my parents can have a cup of coffee at 10 o'clock at night and immediately go to sleep after, and I can't. If I have a soda, a diet soda with my lunch, I can't sleep that night. So, if you're prone to having, if caffeine is a barrier for your sleep, I would avoid having that, having it at all or having it, later in the day. Being physically active is not just good for our heart and our brain, but it's good. We're burning some extra energy, and it helps us sleep better. We want to try to minimize naps that you take during the day, especially long naps. I think there's research that has shown that having kind of a power nap or a kind of a cat nap during the day can be rejuvenating. But if you're having 2-hour naps, middle of the day, afternoon, that can actually disrupt your sleep cycle and make it harder for you to sleep. And then keeping a regular sleep schedule is really important too. I know I'm very tempted to sleep in until, 9 o'clock or later on the weekends when I'm not working and I don't have to get up for work. But really, I try to not do that because when I have to go back to work on Monday, it makes it harder when I have to go back to work. Some other tips are keeping your sleep environment. We call it sleep hygiene. So keeping kind of a healthy sleep environment. So things like keeping cooler temperatures in your room, trying to minimize noise and distractions, and blocking light if that causes trouble for you when it comes to sleep. And, I know that it says minimize noise here on the slide, but there are some people, including myself, who actually need a little bit of background noise, need some white noise in order to, relax and fall asleep at night. So if that's an option that works for you, that's fine as well. So we're going to look at the last three of our healthy habits here, exercising our brain, staying in school, and just continuing on with your education, which I like to tell people they can kind of check off the list today because you're either joining us live at RiverMead or you're joining us over Zoom today. And then protecting our heads, protecting our brains and our skulls. So we want to keep our brains working hard and we want to challenge our brain. So cognitive engagement builds new connections in our brains and maintains our brain cells. So when we're learning, we're building and maintaining our cognition. And of course, we want to do that. So although it's listed here that levels of formal education are really helpful, if you don't have formal levels of education, it does not mean that you're not an intelligent person. And it doesn't mean that you have poor cognition in any way, shape, or form. We just encourage people to continue with kind of lifelong learning, trying new things, challenging yourself. That's all going to be really helpful for you. And again, cognitive exercise, just like with physical exercise, encourages that blood flow to the brain, and maintaining those connections between brain cells. So exercising your mind, staying in school or continuing with kind of lifelong learning is really great. And I'm sure we can all think about ways that we can challenge our brains, whether it's puzzles, whether it's games, whether it's learning a new language. I know that RiverMead has lots of activities, so participating in those, um, exploring a new hobby or returning to an old hobby. I know that when my father retired, I encouraged him to go back to playing his guitar, which he hadn't played in many, many years. So he's kind of picking that back up again. So all of these things are really helpful in engaging your brain, and reducing your risk of dementia. So I think it goes without saying, we really want to protect our brain. We want to protect our skull. And head injuries, whether it's a mild concussion or something that lingers more than just a concussion, um, you know, we want to help people avoid those types of injuries because those types of injuries can increase your risk of developing dementia. And traumatic brain injuries, if they're even mild, and concussions are considered mild traumatic brain injuries. Those things, again, if left untreated when you get them, can be a problem when later on in life when it comes to cognition. So get those concussions treated. Make sure you're getting enough rest. Make sure you're doing the therapies that your healthcare provider recommends for you. And certainly, if you have a more significant traumatic brain injury, you'll have monitoring and treatments and interventions that are appropriate for you. So we want to encourage people, of course, to wear seat belts, to wear helmets, and to just keep an eye on your physical environment, stairs, ladders, clutter on the floor around your house, so that you're not, increasing your risk of falling, hitting your head, or frankly, injuring other parts of your body as well. So here are some key takeaways. It's never too early or too late to start, incorporating healthy habits into your life. We want to nurture the healthy habits that you already have, or encourage you to start some new ones, or maximize the current ones that you already have. Include a variety of healthy habits into your life. You don't have to do all of make improvements to all of these 10 things that we're talking about today. I would encourage you to pick one. Try to drink a glass of water in the morning before you do anything else. Maybe you add 5 minutes onto the walk you do with your dog, every day. So maybe you swap out one food for another. So I encourage you to think about which one might be, frankly, easiest probably for you. That's a great place to start. Certainly you can incorporate as many of these as possible. We encourage you to do that, but just know that you can start off small and in terms of making changes. And consistency is really key. So making small changes that stick and that last and that are consistent are going to be the most beneficial for you. So again, these are our 10 healthy habits for your brain. And just briefly on this last slide, we just want to let you know that the Alzheimer's Association is here for you. Even when people don't have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or another type of dementia, they're welcome to call. If you have a concern about someone else in your life, if you have a concern about yourself, about changes you're experiencing, but you haven't gotten to the point that you've gotten a diagnosis, you can reach out to us. If you have any questions, we get asked questions about, what treatments are available now, what are some support groups that are available, assisted livings, nursing homes, CCRCs are in my area because I'm looking at that for my loved one. So people can use us 24 hours a day, nights, weekends, and holidays as a resource. Everything that we do for families and in the community is free of charge. And that's because we have some revenue-driven events that provide funding for us to continue doing what we do in New Hampshire without having to charge for anything. And I've been with the Alzheimer's Association for 15 years, and we've never had to charge for anything that we do for families and in the community, which I think is such a blessing because Alzheimer's and other types of dementia, these are very expensive disease processes. And, both financially, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of these things. But again, it is a very financially expensive disease process. So very glad to be able to offer our programs and services at no cost. What I want you to take away today, in addition to starting to maybe make a change with one of your lifestyle, one of your lifestyle choices, something that we've talked about today. I want to let you know that our helpline, this toll-free 1-800 number that's listed here, that takes you to our 24/7 helpline where we can help you with anything that you need any time of day. And we also do a ton of education, which you're here to experience and you have experienced today. So we do that. We do virtual education. We do in-person education. We have tons of resources on our website. And we can direct you to a lot of other community resources that you might need as well if you reach out to us. So I'm pretty sure that's the end of what I'm going to talk about. I think Jennifer, I'm going to pass it back to you to go over maybe another reminder or two, and then we can, there'll be a few more minutes for Q&A.
Thank you for all of that.
You're welcome.
And we will take questions. So please, if you have questions, start popping them into the Q&A. But I do want to say that our next event is on September 17th, and that's in person here at RiverMead at 11 a.m. And it's a panel luncheon. So we call it Inside Scoop at RiverMead. So our residents will be talking about why they chose RiverMead, what kind of things they're involved with here, how they did the downsizing and the moves, what in their life changed and what in their life didn't change. And they like to talk about their life of purpose and what they're doing every day. So please join us for that on the 17th at 11 a.m. And we have our questions. Somebody's asking about programming, like what kind of programming we have here at RiverMead. And gosh, we have all kinds of programming, kind of touching on what Melissa was saying about the mind, body, soul connection. And so there's intellectual programming and classes and things to challenge your mind. We have brain games. We have groups of people that play mahjong or play chess or bridge. And so there's all kinds of things around that. There's exercise programs here. We have a two-story fitness center with a studio space and a workout area with equipment and instructor-led classes and resident-led classes. And lots of it is just really fun. There's recreation outside. Being outside in nature is a great way to keep us feeling positive and upbeat and motivated. And we've got great trails on our property and places to be outside. And there's also the social connection, which we know helps people live longer. And I like this term. One of our residents calls it social light. She likes knowing that there's socializing going on. If she'd like to be part of it, it's there. So she's happy reading the newspaper and sitting in the coffee area and just knowing there's people nearby to chat with. So, if you're interested, please reach out to us and come take a tour. You'll get to see a lot of that in person. Any other questions for us? All right. Well, if we don't have anything else, you know how to reach us, you know how to reach Melissa. Thank you, Melissa, so much. Really
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys at RiverMead.
Okay, and hey, we'll see everybody at the walk, the Alzheimer's walk in Keene,
Yes.
August,
Please,
or
yeah, please, October, yeah.
October.
Please join us at the end of October. We'd love to see all of you, and it's free to attend. It's a pet friendly, it's a family event, and people who just want to support the cause or people that are caring for someone or living with the disease, they can come and be around hundreds of other people that are also impacted, and just know that they're not alone and get some information and just get our exercise in for that day. So.
Great. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Take good
Thanks,
care.
everyone.